Wow, this Easter sure looks a whole lot better than last Easter in this sanctuary. I'm so grateful that we're able to join together, and literally for you that are home, the balconies are hanging full. Not quite, we're all socially distancing, but there are people in the balcony, and so it's great to be able to turn up that way. I'm glad I got my COVID shot in my left arm so that I can look to the right. You're good to go. But what a glorious day to be able to get together as part of God's family to celebrate the good news once again of the resurrection, the power of Jesus alive in the world. It seems to me this year, perhaps there's been constant, more so than normal. We've lived in a Good Friday world. The news of Good Friday, the death, the torture, the aggravation, the pain of the cross has continued to perpetuate our society for much longer in many places, but especially it's seemingly so in this past year. Devastation, destruction, unrest, violence, sickness, death. It's been a long, long, long year. And without being able to celebrate Easter so much last year, it seems like we've gone 2 years of Lent. It's been a long time. It's been a Good Friday world for a while. But today, we celebrate Easter. We join with the angels and all the bands of heaven, and that beautiful music is not nearly enough as our human ability makes it loud. I mean, we try as our Dickens, and it is awesome and wonderful, and yet it's small, but a glimmer of the good news of Christ. The flowers, I really worried this year. I said there won't be as many of us here this year. There won't be as many beautiful flowers on the cross. It's kind of this thing. I had a friend, and she once said that an early Easter you always had white flowers, and a late Easter you have more yellow flowers. Or yellow first and then white. This year, we're so late or something, the weather's the way it is, it's a beautiful, multicolored cross. It's just so wonderful and pretty. I love that we all bring what we have from home or for the store or wherever you might, from the neighbor's flower bed if you are quick at night. When we bring those flowers together and put them on the cross and the beauty that comes from that. And this year, our flowers around the altar represent all kinds of different stuff, different colors. And the special arrangement for just coming together of so many different things. You know, that's really part of Easter too. It's that Easter message is carried on the lips of so many different people into the world. This year, I've stuck with the Gospel of John text. It's usually the principal text read at a lot of Easter services. Sometimes I'll go a little wacky and read from the Gospels, the other synoptic Gospels. But this year, I stuck with John. We needed to hear that old familiar story once again, and I found myself up here reading and connected to the story of Christmas. There's such power in hearing those words again in our lives, and the gratitude and gratefulness to God for giving us Christ at Christmas, and the joy and the goodness of hearing of the resurrection's news again in our lives at Easter. Oh, I hope it resonated in your soul half as much as it did in mine, but I hope probably more than me. This story is full of power in a Good Friday world. I can't imagine being those disciples long ago. I mean, they had traveled with Jesus, lived with him 3 years, heard his teaching, sat at his feet, slept in the area around him, perhaps heard him snore or say he was hungry. He might have even said, "I'm tired," a few times. That humanness of Jesus they had seen. They knew that he was fully human. And today in this story, we know that he is fully divine. For the one in which the world put to death on a cross in pain and torture is alive forevermore. The tenet of the faith, that Christ is alive forevermore. That the sting of death has ended. That the victory is won. That life is not only for now, but is eternal with God. That the Spirit of God is able to do far more than our human minds can ever envision. And the gloriousness of God is revealed. Those disciples, they had seen him put into the tomb perhaps and seen the stone rolled in front of the tomb. The finality of death as they had experienced it and understood it had happened. Somehow Mary Magdalene decides to go, perhaps out of her great love, respect. Some of the other Gospels say perhaps that they went to anoint the body with spices as a final fatality of death. But Mary Magdalene goes to the tomb. She gets there and sees the stone away. Something is amiss. The patterns, the traditions, the habits of the world are not what is practiced. She ran to the closest place she knew that would help, that would care. She went to the disciples. And I love good old Peter. Peter's always the first one to do about anything, even if it is wrong. And John, tradition says, there's some other scholarship out there that says perhaps in the Gospels, a writer's John, the disciple whom Jesus loved, perhaps could have been Mary Magdalene. There's some scholarship that says that. But there's also some scholarship that says that the gospel writer in the Gospel of John lays out throughout the story, and you can go home and read Gospel of John. It's not that long. That the disciple whom Jesus loved is actually the reader. It's us. It's you. For that's really the disciple that Jesus is talking to. Many of us on our journey of faith realizes that there's a part of this faith that's just me and Jesus. In the dark days, in the dreary days, in the hard days, times when we feel lonely or alone, it's me and Jesus. Jesus cares about us that very much. But our faith and tenets of our faith and our understanding of creation and all of humanity is that God created all things. And just as that comfort comes to us and what a friend we have in Jesus, it is for the whole world and for all of God's people, for all of creation. Not just for the some, but for all of us. I always love that, and I'm not sure who said it offhand. The very idea, did you think that Jesus was willing to die on the cross for just you? And the theological implication is, yes, it's just for me. But it's also for the whole world. Jesus was willing to die for all of us on the cross. But Jesus rose for me, for you, for us as individuals, but also for us as the collective of God's creation. For all of God's people are brought in to the faith through the waters of baptism, through the efforts of the cross, and through the good news of the resurrection. That our life is not ended, but our life has hope and meaning, trust. The disciples, they went with Mary. They went into the tomb. They looked. The disciple whom Jesus loved looked into the tomb but didn't go in. And Peter, being Peter, just busted right on in. Saw the linen wrappings lying there where Jesus' body had been. But it was no more. Went away, understanding finally what Jesus had taught, that he would rise again in 3 days. Perhaps that resonated enough with them, they left. And Mary, out of her deep love, deep care, deep respect for Christ and what he meant for her, to her, stayed. Lo and behold, sometimes when you get still, you hear things and you see things and you understand things in a different way. In our business of the world, we get distracted by so many things. But sometimes it just takes a time to sit and to think and to ponder. And we begin to see a new way through things. Perhaps it's God's Spirit speaking to us too, that I am here to comfort you. I'm here to go with you. I'm here to challenge you. I'm here to be with you, to guide you, to give you hope, strength. Oh, God knows you much better than I do. It offers to you what you need. And perhaps for Mary, sitting there waiting, I don't think there's much things that would be much clearer, many things that would be much more clear than two angels sitting in front of you. I'm okay with never seeing that. I believe this story, but I don't need to. I'd be scared to death. So perhaps that's why angels always say, "Fear not." Other places, I'd be afraid too. She sees that, and then she hears something behind, and she turns, and there's a man standing behind her. She doesn't recognize him. She thinks he's the gardener. Where did you put Jesus? Tell me, and I'll go take care of him. Just tell me, let me know. Help me get through this. Calls her by name, Mary. And she instantly recognizes that it's the teacher, it's the Rabboni. He says, "Don't touch me, not yet ascended, but go and tell. Tell the disciples what you've learned." I'm awful proud of Mary. In Mary's world, in Mary's day, her voice probably wasn't as strong and as strengthened, as listened to as some of the others might have been. And yet she saw fit to bravely go into the world to say an unfamiliar message in a Good Friday world. Can you imagine hearing that, never having it heard before? We have the gift of 2,000 years of history, of the proclamation, of the work of the church, of the Spirit's moving. To hear this great message of joy and life, forgiveness and love. And still, it kind of gets boggled in my mind sometimes. And yet we're called to be those messengers too. It's perhaps we take a little bit of comfort in Mary Magdalene and what she did so long ago. We may not be the very best messenger for the news of the resurrection to go into the world, but we are God's messenger. That we're strengthened through God's Spirit to live as Easter people in a Good Friday world. That we're called to go forth and to see with different eyes, to feel with different feelings. To love, to forgive, all the things that you know that Christ would do. We're called to go forth into the world with a bold message of life, even in the midst of death. For strength in the midst of weakness. And for hope in hopelessness. Go into the world. Be the people of Christ. Show the world the Christ that lives within you and through you. Through the grace and power and glory and honor of the one who was, who is, and who is to come. Amen.